All right, so I think it's time to start the conversation. First of all, good morning to some of you who are joining from United States. I can see some people joining it from Europe, Netherlands. So good afternoon to all of you. And for all of those who are joining from Asia, from I would say China and India, I think good evening. It might be pretty late at all of your sides. So good. So I think this series is getting very successful. Yesterday we talked about how companies can license their patents without spending any money on consultants or without spending huge money on paying for the analysis. And I was amazed to see that after the webinar, I received so many emails asking me questions about how it can be done. So it was great, and I think today's session is more about how we can use the patent data specifically for the business development of the law firms. And I found out that, when we talk about the law firms that are large in size, so when I say large in size, I mean the one that are called as the top notch in their own domain, and the one which are the one which find difficulty in creating a differentiation among their clients. There is a huge difference in how they approach or what is their vision towards approaching their clients. And because we work with a lot of different types of firms across all the ladder, we thought that it is very, very important that we talk about how such kind of strategies can be used by the firms who are using the traditional mindset and how they can get ahead of all the others. So it is similar to how 5 years back people were not considering big data in a serious way, and all the companies that considered it as something that is not relevant to them were way back with respect to the competitors who adopted the big data much early in their life cycle. So I think it's similar case here. There are a lot of law firms who have already started using it, and it can become very interesting when the other players also get to know about such kind of strategies. So we are going to talk about various different kind of things, how law firms can use to increase their business and get ahead of their competitive law firms. So I have with me my colleague Vikas, who have actually worked with a lot of law firms in guiding them on how they can increase their business in multifold. So he has experience in directly sharing or working or building their strategies and seeing the kind of results that they have got. So I thought that today I should actually pass on the command to him rather than me leading over, and I'm going to actually just ask him questions in between, same as you guys. So Vikas, why don't you start today's session, and we all would be the listeners today.
Thanks, Deepak, and hello everybody. Good to connect with you. Welcome to this seminar, and let me talk about the major problems as to why we need to differentiate ourselves when we are going for business development activities. So the first thing is that there are a lot of law firms out there who all are trying similar type of strategies to actually gain potential clients or gain business out of their existing clients. Now, like in all cases, it is very difficult to differentiate since everybody is doing the same type of work. And when you are having a first meeting, it is even more difficult to impress upon them why you are so different from somebody else. There might be a lot of things that you may talk about yourself, your success rate, what kind of team structure do you have, and then what kind of personal time you can provide to the client, so on and so forth. But this is something that everybody else is also going to talk about. You may be successful here, you may not be successful here if the client has already heard these type of pitches many times. So what we were planning to show today in the webinar is some strategies, some ideas using the patent data to actually come up with differentiators in the pitch that actually works. And then we have worked with a lot of law firms in guiding them, in providing them solutions that may help them to actually talk to their clients, take this information as a conversation starter, and then proceed from there. So I'm going to talk about three major topics today.
Vikas, this is Deepak. I have one quick question here. So when you're talking about identifying your differentiation, I feel, isn't this the problem with every type of professional services? Because until you have worked with a particular client, it is very difficult to know how good you are. And, if the client has never worked with you, you cannot tell him that you can do a very good work for him, or whatever he's going to pay you is going to be much more worthwhile as compared to choosing somebody else who may be providing the same services at less cost. I've seen not just the law firm, even the companies are also facing the same problem. They are not able to figure out how to show to their clients. So is this the same that you were referring to?
Absolutely, Deepak. I think I may have gone specifically into law firms, but this is a problem which is universal. In fact, this is a problem with vendors, service providers, law firms, corporates, everybody. So this is a generic problem, and I think the idea behind sharing some of the strategies that have been implemented by some of our clients and which have gained traction is to actually provide some guidance, some semblance of data that can be used to put the foot in the door, and then gain the client's ears to actually put in your thoughts as to how you are going to help them, so on and so forth, so that they are listening to you attentively. So some of these strategies are related to that. Some other strategies are related to what kind of information or how you can present this information to your advantage. And so that's how we planned the webinar. And I think, Deepak, you are correct in mentioning that this is a universal problem. So guys, let me proceed from here. Let me start with the beginning. And this is in a situation when you have you want to gain some more clients in domains that you're already working in. So for example, on the screen, you see that I have divided or charted the type of clients that I'm working with, right? And now I want to understand where I have limited clienteles, and I want to add more clients here. So what could be the strategies here that can actually help me to gain more clients in the areas where I have expertise, where I have experience, but I don't have much clientele, and how to approach them and how to go about it. So Deepak, before I proceed, do you want to add some background here?
Because I would only like to say that the biggest thing that I have felt is if somehow when we are first time talking to the client, if we have hard statistics to prove that how good I am, definitely convert him. There's no doubt about that. And if you can tell me how it is possible, I would definitely like to use it while I am talking to my clients, rather than, even if we are talking about law firms here. So I think let's see what is going to come up.
Sure. So moving ahead, let's look at some of the present clients that I have in the bundles that we had identified. So I see that there are a lot of medical devices company that are in my clientele. Now, do I want some other companies, or do I try to increase the business or pitch some more solutions to my existing clientele? So let's move ahead and try to find out what could be some hard statistics, as Deepak mentioned, or as he termed it, to actually take my presentation with a differentiator to my client. So one of the things that we need to understand about our clientele is that they themselves are not always aware of the type of problems they are facing. Many a times they might be following conventional routes, going by the conventional methodologies that they have been following for the past years. They may be aware of the situations, but it's not such a big pain point that they are going to actually start taking a deep dive. And then it's usually masked by the conventional strategies that they are following. So what we can do to actually bring out those pain points of those clients and actually talk in the terms that they will understand is start identifying companies that have, say, for example, a bleak track record of filings at USPTO. For example, some of the stats that I have mentioned on the screen are low grant rate related to their applications, related to very high time to grant, large number of office actions. Now, these are cases which remain hidden. There might be a single case where, say, for example, they might have got 7 rejections or 8 rejections, and then they might have filed 4 or 5 RCEs. Now, these are one-off cases, which they might not be taking notice of. Now, the idea is to actually pick out these kind of stats and compile them together and say, hey, look, I was going through your data, and then I understand that there are a few cases that might have been missed by you, but I see that there is a way to actually solve your problems here. Or had it been done in this manner, this could have been a good strategy for you. So these are the types of things where we are trying to uncover pain points of the companies during their patent prosecution process, and trying to highlight as to how the capabilities that we have or you have can solve these type of problems.
So Vikas, do you mean that this is the reason why the top law firms maybe it is more easier for them to get more clients? Or I would say that I have also seen some medium-sized law firms moving at a much faster pace and trying to get business, which was earlier with the large law firms, and now it is all coming to them. Do you think it is because they are highlighting such kind of stats to their potential clients, and it is making easier for them to, convey that there's, it's not just in the name that you have to be associated with a large brand name. You can also do a good work if your stats are very good.
Absolutely, Deepak. Absolutely. And sometimes there is, in fact, one of the major factors between choosing service providers or vendors is that the pricing factor. And in fact, big law firms, large law firms, they have a typical advantage, which is good for them. And that is that they can play with the pricing according to the client demands. And of course, I mean, they are always leveraging their brand names. Now, one of the things that small and medium law firms or individual practitioners can do is to actually highlight in the technology area of interest of their prospects or clients as to how they are better, how the quality of their claims is better, how their stats are better, emphasize on these points, make a comparison, make a benchmarking, and then go to the client and give their pitch as to this is how the scenario is with the law firms that they are currently using, with the success rate that we have, and that gives you a conversation starter as to, the client also understands that the current service providers or the law firms that he is using might be a little bit off, might be, there might be better options that might be available. So Deepak, you're right, this is one of the strategies that probably is being used by a lot of medium-sized and small-sized law firms to actually gain business that was previously with the big or larger law firms.
I think because this is majorly the problem with the prosecution attorneys or law firm, because I've seen when we talk about litigation attorneys, they use this very heavily. That is, they showcase how many cases they have won or how much damages they have won for their previous clients, and they use that as a leverage for gaining more clients, which is not bad. I mean, you're just showing that why you are good, why clients should pay more for your services. And on a similar level, I've seen the same thing happening when someone is involved in merger and acquisition, where the consultants actually win their clients not just from their name or the brand name or how popular they are, but actually showcasing how large the deals that they have closed in past.
Absolutely, Deepak. And I think I resonate with your point and insight here. I just wanted to take an example here, and I have taken the name of, say, for example, one of the prospective clients that I want to add to my kit is Sharp Corporation. Now, what I have done is I have simply used the examiner analysis tool that I have in front of me that gives me the data on their prosecution, the stats, what kind of law firms they are using. Now, this is a good starting point to collect data related to the prosecution of a prospective client. And I can see here that there are a lot of law firms which appear to, I mean, the number of applications are low here, but there are a lot of law firms that are being used by this corporation, Sharp Corporation. I can see that there is one law firm, Slater, which has low allowance rate, but is still working with the corporation. These can be one of the stats that you can actually start with, that, hey, you are using a lot of law firms. Some have good allowance rates, some or grant rates, some do not appear to be having such a good allowance rate. Now use these statistics, use your own statistics, and then make a pitch as to how you have an advantage, how you present an advantage if the client opts to work with you. So this is one way that I was talking about. There are other ways also, but let me switch back to the presentation and continue from where I left. I just wanted to present an example as to how these kind of data can be acquired. And this data is not something that requires a lot of money. This is something that is already available at the USPTO, and tools like examiner analysis tool can very easily give you a compiled list of data based on the big data analytics that has been done behind this tool to present something in this manner that you see on the screen, where you are benchmarking yourself against a lot of law firms, and you are providing as to how your grant time is better than somebody else's, or even so this is and this brings me to a very important factor as to how to throw pricing into the background and bring quality at the top in your conversations with the client. So usually, I mean, when you are doing a pitch, when you are only talking about yourselves or your capabilities and how they are a good fit to the client, it happens that the only differentiating factor for the client as compared to other people who are trying to pitch to the client is the pricing. And it's obvious, or it's expected that this is going to happen. Now, to actually avoid such kind of pitfalls, you should start with hard statistics and then tell that this is something that I want to start with. Once you show that your quality is good, once you show that your performance is good in a respective art unit or in respective technology which is of interest to the client, the conversation automatically shifts to a place which is in your advantage, a place where you have already thrown in your trump cards at the beginning, and then the client is talking more about your capabilities rather than the pricing.
Because I've also seen on the other side of the story, that means the corporation using this as a measure to figure out which law firms they should work with. That means if they are smarter than you and you are not using it, that means you do not know what are the parameters they are using to make a decision. Is this understanding right?
Absolutely, Deepak. In fact, the game can go the other way also. So, for example, if Sharp is looking at this data, they are able to see which of their law firms that they are using is good for them, which is not so good for them, whose performance is how, and then this gives them an idea as to how to select the law firms or which law firms to select based on the real performance data.
Yeah, I think so. That means if we are late to the party, that means the other one will start rejecting, and we will never know why this is happening. And I've seen that a lot of industry, due to all of this, what in the end happens is that the competition starts happening only on the price. That means I can provide you lower price patent application, or I can provide you fixed cost no matter how much hours may be required, or how many office action may come up, or how difficult is the application. And I've seen that the discussion going that way because you don't have any other aspect to leverage your expertise.
I agree, Deepak. I agree, and I think that was the point of actually using some of the statistics that talk in your favor when you are presenting or preparing a pitch for new business development. So the examples that you see on the screen. So, for example, let me talk about how we can differentiate here. So, for example, I have seen that my client is using law firm A, B, C, and D, and I want to start with some of the stats that are in my favor. So I can see that I can use certain basic parameters to actually talk about. I don't have to go into a very deep level of understanding of the client statistics. All I need is the grant rate, the average number of office action, percentage of granted patent with no RC. Now, this is a good factor to actually keep in mind when you are pitching to potential clients. And then the reason I'm saying this is that, like Deepak mentioned, to avoid going into a discussion where pricing becomes the major factor, what one could do is one could try to show that even if there is a difference in the pricing, but while working with certain law firm, say for example, law firm B, there is a lot of RCEs that are there, and these things are costly, I mean, these add to the cost of the prosecution. So if you're saying that, so this kind of gives a counter example as to, even if there is a difference in the pricing, in the long term, if you have less number of office actions, if you have less number of RCEs that you need to file for getting a patent granted, it will be a benefit to the client, both cost-wise as well as quality-wise. So this is something that can be emphasized during the pitch. And then that's why it took some sample data just to show that how this works.
I can very well relate to it, Vikas, because, I met a lawyer when I was in a conference in New York. And we were, on a dinner table, how, everybody is at the end of the conference. And I was just talking to him, and he said that, I've heard that there's a lot of cost cutting happening in the IP department, and so have you also faced something like that with your clients? So he said that no way. In fact, I have increased my pricing. He said that people work with me not because I can file patent application for them. He said that they work for me because my grant rate, that means I can get the patent application granted for them. And there's a huge difference in these two statements. So he said that, all the applications that he has prosecuted till now, 99% of them have been granted. So, so it is like, it completely changes the whole picture, because prosecution is generally, traditionally have just been thought about as, I can help you file patents, and I can help you, prosecute patents during examination. And when you say that I can help you get your patents granted, you are not charging for hours that you are spending. You are actually charging for getting them a granted patent and of good quality. When I say good quality, that is very important, because otherwise you can just narrow down any claim and get the patent granted. So I think I could relate to what you were saying, and this came into mind, so I just thought to share it in this session.
Sure. And I think one of the examples that I wanted to take to emphasize this point was that based on my experience in helping law firm business development, or in general business development, what I understood was that there are always going to be statistics that are going to be in your favor, and then there are always going to be statistics that are going to be not in your favor, or in your competitor's favor. Now, the understanding or the detail of investigation is that not thinking from your own perspective, but thinking from a client perspective, where you're trying to identify pain points of the client. So for example, your grant rate, or in general, your grant rate or number of office actions might be lesser as compared to the competitors. But in cases, what you need to understand is, are there any applications, or are there cases, a lot of cases with my client, that are actually, despite the better grant rate, in general better grant rate, or number of office actions of the law firms who are working with my prospective client, is there a problem that I can identify? So one of the ideas is to actually look at the number of office actions or rejections, go into a bit more depth, try to understand cases. Are there one-off cases where there were a lot of office actions, or is it something very frequent? On the converse, if there is a case where some of the client's applications is getting granted in the first office action itself, or is getting granted only with one office actions, and this is something of an anomaly as compared to the group art units that the client is associated with, both these factors can be highlighted. So in cases where there are a lot of office actions, the argument is simple, that even though the people you are working with have a good allowance rate, in this particular technology, I may be able to help you. I can help you understand why you are getting so many office actions or so many rejections. And we can specifically pick up examiners and try to understand their behavioral pattern in order to supplement this argument. And then let me take an example of this. I think this is a good time to take that example. Let me open up my exam analytics tool. So I have simply taken an example of an examiner, Abigail Fisher. Now, this examiner appears to have a very low allowance rate. Now, it may be a case that a lot of your clients' applications are being examined by this examiner in an art unit. Although the group art unit has a good allowance rate, but the specific examiner has a low allowance rate. Now, this gives you a good point or an insight that you can bring to the table for the client, saying, hey, I looked at your data and I was able to understand why you are getting so many rejections or why your allowance rate is so less. Now, what could be something that could be more interesting to the client is how you can solve that problem. So for example, in this case, you can simply point out to the client that I was looking at the data of this examiner itself. This appears to be a difficult examiner to deal with, and it appears that there is an alternating cycle of non-final and final rejections given by this client. Now, based on the past applications that have been examined by this examiner, and what the past applicants who have been successful with this examiner have done is, I can show them, or you can talk about, hey, this RCs is something that works with this examiner. So had you filed an RC after a final rejection in the second step, there was a high chance that you would have got your patent granted. In fact, this also gives a reasonable basis for you to suggest strategies, whether they should go for interviews or RCs, and in that manner, gain the trust of the client that, yes, you understand them much better than they understand their own prosecution, and then you have solutions to the problem that they are currently facing. So highlighting these points is something that can be very useful while pitching. And then again, it brings the focus to the quality or your problem solution approach or your capabilities as compared to the pricing.
Because I think the better way to use is that if I am about to approach a particular client, so let's suppose Walmart. So rather than telling them that I have all of this data, I think the better is that if somehow you can figure it out that which is the examiner that is giving them a lot of trouble, which have rejected a lot of their applications continuously back to back, and which is very easy to find. And you, when you are talking to them first time, you actually tell them about a particular case that you have already spent 3x the money dealing with this examiner, and here is one solution that I'm aware of. And I think that can completely take away all the friction, because you are telling them about the problem, which first they are not aware of, because I've seen a lot of IP counsels do not have that much of detailed knowledge. They just see that, should the office action continue or not, and they just look at, how many we have already done, what are our chances. So if you are telling them of the problem along with the solution, it can create a huge impact.
Absolutely, Deepak. And I was about to take that example here. So in this case, I was just looking at, I was just curious, and I'm looking at the examiners that have been examining Sharp's patents. And then I see that although there are the allowance rate in general of the examiners is good, there is one examiner who has a very low allowance rate. And then he might be the reason that they might be spending a lot of money on office actions or RCs to actually get their patents granted. So this is an idea that can be used, or this is a statistics that can be used to provide insights to the client on their prosecution process and how it can be improved. So coming back to some of the other strategies that I have with me, let me talk about. So I have certain examples related to how we can engage the client on the pain points, and then I think I just took up these examples based on a live cases. So I talked about examiners, I talked about attorneys, and how we can use this data to actually pitch ourselves in a better manner as compared to somebody else. So let me skip to the slides that I have not talked about. I think these are the ones that I've already talked about. there is one strategy that I wanted to emphasize, and this was that usually what happens is that when we are going to a client, we have a presentation deck made which actually emphasizes on our capabilities, how the law firm has been structured to deal with different technology areas, how this can be a one-stop solution for everybody, each of the client's needs, so on and so forth. One of the alternative ways is to actually understand the client's domain, the competitor activity, and kind of get a lay of the land based on the patent data, a very superficial kind of an understanding of the landscape, and then talk to the client about the awareness that you have, and then show to them that you understand what the client is going through right now. This is very similar to I speak French, you speak Spanish, but what if I understand Spanish also, and then I start talking to you in Spanish? So that will create a much better rapport as compared to we talking two different languages. The client might be interested in your capabilities. The client might have already heard a lot of others who are pitching the same things to them. So it's better to start with the client, focus on the client, start and talk about, then proceed from there with hard statistics. I think some of the examples that I have already, I got ahead of myself, and I think I took the live examples first, but I had screenshots based on my research, based on my past experiences to show how to use patent analytics to identify other law firms who are working for your clients, and how to pitch your advantages as compared to them. So this is just an example of how we can do that. And here I have taken an example of Stryker corporations, and then I have tried to identify what kind of which law firms are they using currently, and are there any law firms that appear to be problematic or are getting a low allowance rate with the applications of this client, and how you are able to solve this problem. This is another example of how you can do the benchmarking by adding value to your existing client. It can also be very useful in situations where, say, for example, you are working with a client which is a big corporate, and they are working in multiple domains. You have been working with only one technology domain of their interest. Now, one of the ways to expand into other domains is, again, to pick up an art unit where they're filing more, try to understand the other law firms that are working there, and again, use the same strategy of pitching your statistics to actually show that you are also capable of working in the other technology areas because you have a better track record as compared to somebody who is already working with them. So this is an example of that sample data. So I think this brings to the last slide, or the last strategy. Deepak, anything that you want to say in conclusion to this webinar?
I think one thing that I have observed is a lot of when I worked with a lot of prosecution attorneys, the top ones specifically. Sometimes there is so much focus on there are few within the law firm whose only objective is business development, and there are few who keeps on working on the prosecution. That means even after their 15 years, 20 years of experience, they are still drafting code application, and there are a few who have moved on. And sometimes it is a choice. That means it is my choice because I want to be at the client side, and there are some who actually love doing the work, so they keep on doing. But there is one very strong differentiation factor that I have seen is there are few people who are very analytical. And when I say analytical, that means it is not from a positive or negative aspect, but there are few who knows that how to convey my strength in an objective way, which starts making sense to the individuals that I'm talking to. And I think they are the one who slowly move towards more from the client side, or slowly go faster above the ladder and become the partner or senior partner or managing partner. And I've seen that one thing whenever I interact with them is that they have very strong facts always with them, or very strong strategies, and they are not just based on hunch, because this used to work 10 years back. That means you just say that I have more experience and that was enough. But I think now, since there are so many people doing the same type of work and there are so many patents being filed, there are so many examiners that are there, you cannot just say that I have experience because there are so many other people also have experience. So there's a high need to combine what used to be traditionally used with what is today's world talking about. And some people say that it is not going to work because I have talked about strategy with a lot of other law firms as well. But most of the time I've seen that some people say that this is not work, because our clients know us personally. The same thing which I talked in the start. But what matters is that when we, in this modern world, the biggest risk that actually we can take is not taking a risk. So if you're not taking a risk of using the new things, getting outdated is the simplest thing that can happen to us, or the easiest thing, or the first thing that will happen to us. We'll get outdated and we'll never get to know how the others have taken over. So that's why I thought that it would be, we should at least talk about this with all of our clients and all of our subscribers who read regularly about our different strategies that we talk, because they should be ahead of all the others. So that's why we thought to organize this webinar also specifically for the subscribers first, so that they hear about it and they start using it. And if they face any difficulty, of course we are there. They can ask us questions, or they can ask us that how they can get access to such kind of system and all of these details. So I think that is what I wanted to share in the end, that why it is important to keep experimenting with the new things.
Absolutely, Deepak, and I think that is a fine way to sum up the strategies, or in general the philosophy behind why we constantly need to innovate in everything we do, in whether it is business development, whether it is our day-to-day work, so on and so forth. So I think good. It was good presenting on this webinar, and I believe that some part of it might be useful to some of you who is listening to this webinar. Thank you for your time, and if you have some questions, you can directly email it to us, and we'll reply on email. And I also wanted to mention that in case some of you would like to use our examiner analytics tool to actually bring out some statistics that you may want to use in your pitch, feel free to actually ping us. The subscription is free for the first month, and you can try to use and see if this adds value to your current pitch. Adding statistics add value to your current pitch, and then proceed from there. Thank you, everybody. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, because I think specifically we're mentioning about being used for free for first month, and I've seen that there are some people who say that this is freely available on the internet. There are some tools like Examiner Analytics, but I would like to mention that that they do not have the complete data. So what I mean is that if they do not have all the patents related to an examiner, and they are providing it for free, so that means you do not know that how that examiner is behaving, because you do not know about all the decisions. So free should not be confused as enough to make the decisions at your end, because there is this data, that this can only be identified if you have the whole US Patent Office data. That means all the data that is available on PAIR, and that is huge, and it requires a lot of cost that is there. So and regular updating it with all the new prosecutions that are happening. So we have to be very careful on what kind of data we are using while we are building the suggestions, or while we are suggesting to the client, because this is kind of a very common, I would say, which it is a myth, but it is going on very popularly among everybody, that it is like Google Patents. It is not like Google Patents. Okay, so good to end. Thank you very much, Vikas, for leading the session and sharing so many things with everyone. And today we are not going to exceed as we did yesterday because of questions. So thank you very much, and have a nice day ahead. You can reply to my email if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.